Oh yeah, we are back. We are back in the place to be. How are you guys doing? Woo! It has been long overdue to be back here doing this Podcasters Live Academy on a weekend. I started it a while ago, doing it on a Sunday, and kind of stopped. We had a whole bunch of stuff going on, and I am excited to be back connecting with the community, just talking to you guys about what's going on with Podcasters Live, talking to you about what's going on in the podcast industry, live streaming, giving you some tips, and some tricks to kind of help you out with everything you guys have going on. Stoked, stoked to be back. We got a lot of stuff, that we're going to try to pack into this hour today. Maybe a little longer. We'll see. We actually have a princess that is going to make an appearance on Podcasters Live. You heard it first here. We actually have a princess that is actually going to be making an appearance on Podcasters Live Academy here Saturday mornings. Thank you for joining us. Please, if you are looking at this live, if you have any questions or anything, please make sure you go ahead and put them in the comments. If you're looking at this on a replay, make sure that you do the same thing as we start to go through some different tips and some ideas about podcasting and live streaming. If you have a question, please make sure you go ahead and put it in there and comment. If you're looking at this on the replay, do the same thing as well. All right. So without, I hate when people say that. I don't like to say without further ado. I got to find something different. We have to find something different to say, right? When we're about to introduce something or introduce somebody, it's almost like that word value, right? I got like little pet peeves. This isn't like we got a format for this, but I'm gonna leave room for interjection, for myself and for anybody else that wants to say anything. But my little pet peeve that I have right now, word that's been super overused, and that is value. And while it may be true that you may be adding value, or people may be adding value to certain things, it almost gets overused. And so I'm trying to do something as well too. What's going on, Matt? Hey, good to see you, dude. I'm glad you stopped by. Um, yeah, I like to interject. Haha. There you go. Exactly. There you go. Let me interject myself instead of let me introduce myself. I'm glad you're here, dude. I'm really glad you're here. Anybody else that's out there in the audience, please go ahead and say hello. Put your names up in the comments so that we can say hello if you have any questions as well too before we move into um, everything that we got going on. And actually, we have the princess here now, but I'm just gonna keep her in the back room. I'm gonna keep her in the back room for now. Um, I'll just put her in the guest mode. I'll put her in the back room for now. All right, and then of course we have Miss Sherry Jones that says, yes, I'm so tired of the word value, right? Oh my gosh. It gets overused and um it actually starts to lose its value. No pun intended. No pun intended. Actually a whole bunch of pun intended with that one. A whole bunch of pun intended with that one. All right. So before we move into what we're going to be talking about today. Um, just want to let you guys know if you want to make sure you go ahead and pick up any Podcasters Live gear, you can go ahead and go to prestonso.com/podcasters live. You can grab some of our merch. I'm telling you right now, it feels so good. It's soft. It's like a hug, right? You know, in a when you put it on. Also, it's like really cool to like wear like on a Saturday, Sunday morning when you're just chilling out or whatever. But you can go to Podcasters Live, PrestonShow.com/podcasters live and pick up your merch. I got a prototype here that I'm rocking. It's like a long sleeve hoodie that I actually really like. So I'm testing a whole bunch of different things, and I'm actually really so it's not like a regular hoodie, but it's a long sleeve. It's actually pretty cool. So I'm actually digging it as well. I was about to say nice gear. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You know, Sylvia and Andrew have been amazing working with me, helping me just kind of dial in a couple of different things and try to figure some stuff out. So let's go ahead and move into what we're going to talk about today. See, I'm used to doing this at night. So we're going to talk a little bit about audio podcasts. Yes, 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 yes. We have launched an audio podcast. Really, it's just a podcast, right? Because if you have to think about it, it's a podcast is really audio first. That's how it started. I know it's morphing into all this other stuff, and we'll talk about that. Maybe not today, but we'll talk about it kind of down the line. We're going to talk a little bit about marketing for the culture, a conference that I was had the honor to speak at in Atlanta this last week. Was it last week, which was awesome. No, it wasn't last week. It was what's today? Today is Saturday. Oh, it was the week before last. It was the week before last. Man, the time and the days go by so quickly. May 12th, I think that's the day that I spoke. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to give you 3 podcasts and live streaming tips, and then we have some workflow organization, and that is when we are going to be bringing our princess in. I told you we are going to have an actual princess here today on the show, and so we're going to bring her in kind of a little later on down in the segment. But number 5 is really just in general. You can ask questions if you want to join the live stream. That's going to be later down in the in the broadcast. But if you have any questions, anything, make sure you go ahead and put it in there, because when I start talking about the tips, or when Princess and I start talking a little bit about the workflow, if you have some questions, please, we're going to leave some time for that as well too. All right, cool. So just want to say good morning to a couple of people. Good morning, Melissa. How are you doing? Good morning, Steve. Looking forward to the great info today. Excellent. Thank you. Yes, May 12th. It was last week. All right, good deal. All right, I'm not losing it. I'm not losing it. So we have launched our podcast. Those of you who know me, and those of you who are getting to know me, you will learn and understand my passion. Obviously, because I'm rocking and doing this whole podcasters live thing. I am a massive proponent of podcasts. You know, I think they are one of the best things that has happened. I think they are one of the best ways to create not just community, but a word that a lot of people don't associate with podcasting is intimacy, right? Because just think about it. Think about when you listen. If you're new to podcasting, or if you just stumbled upon it or whatever, think about when you listen to a podcast. You don't listen to a podcast in a group, right? It's not a group activity that you're listening to a podcast. You're listening to it individually by yourself, where you're walking, you're in the shower, you're working out, you're taking a walk, the dog for a walk, or you're driving, which is a lot of massive way that I consume a lot of my podcasts is that way. So there is a one-on-one connection that takes place, and you can't beat that. You can't beat that one-on-one connection. And if you have a compelling story, podcast, content, or whatever it is, it will actually it'll start to resonate with people over time. And guess what happens? Now you're creating this relationship with this person via audio. So that's why, in essence, podcast is always going to be audio first. And then I know we're morphing into all these other things, but the the genesis of it was audio first. And that's when I think the real um connection happens. We started Podcasters Live because one of the things that we heard so much in the community, in the podcast community, was I want more people to hear my podcast. I want more downloads. I want a better workflow. I want to express myself, differently. And one of the things that we realized was that one of the best ways to create community is to actually live stream. So one of the things that we talk about within our podcast is actually not just the tips and tricks, but also how to actually kind of create some measure of community using live stream to grow your podcast. I had James Critland on a couple of weeks ago. No, maybe no, not a couple of weeks ago, a couple months ago. But we just released his podcast, and one of the things that we talked about a lot was around the idea that your podcast can be discovered somewhere else, but it can be consumed, whether it's on a different app, Apple, Spotify, or whatever. But the discoverability piece is the biggest piece, right? Anybody can start a podcast. The barriers of entry are super low. Anybody can do that. However, you want to get more people and eyeballs on your podcast. That's where the discoverability comes in, and that's where live streaming takes place. So this is our podcast, Podcasters Live website for for our podcast. We launched with 4 episodes. Thank you, PJ. I'll talk about PJ here in a second as well. She was on my neck, like, dude, you need to get these freaking episodes done. Yeah, what's wrong with you? And so we launched with 4 episodes, and we and a trailer. And I'm excited about this platform that we're using also. It's captivate.com. But more importantly, I'm excited about the content that we're actually presenting. So 7 things I learned from podcasting, actually things that I've been podcasting since 2007. To 2007 to 2011, 12, took a little hiatus and then started back around 2019. So had learned a lot of different things. So that's a really good episode to look into. Mastering your podcast and live streaming skills. We talk a little bit more in depth about how to understand what those looks like. What are the skills that you need to actually become a better podcaster and live streamer as well. Why should podcasters live stream? Killer episode. It really delves into in more depth around what you need to do as a podcaster and why live streaming should be something that you should be looking into. And if you're not looking into it, if you're not doing it right now, man, oh man, I'm telling you, you need to start. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we move down. And then here's then kind of the first episode was with James Critland. And one of the things that we have done with our podcast that actually we're pretty excited about is that, just move over here, is that typically what you see with a podcast or a live stream, people will take the live stream, strip out maybe some of the audience engagement and things like that, and then they will just, you know, kind of edit it up and actually put it on as a podcast. Nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing wrong with that at all. However, one of the things that we are kind of a practitioner of is that when we think about podcasting, we look at it as a craft, and so we try to take things take a different perspective on it. So we just don't strip out the audio from our podcast. We actually take the audio from the guest, and what I try to do is I try to go a little deeper with the conversation, even though we've already previously had it, but I try to actually take it to another level for the audience so that you can have a deeper and broader understanding of a certain topic that we probably didn't have time to really cover in the live stream because we got a lot of audience engagement. There was something that probably the guest said that was probably super dope, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I want to go a little deeper into that. So we try to do that and then show it and then give you sort of a North Star and how this resonates with you and how this should impact you as a podcaster, as a live streamer as well. So just doing some stuff like that. Anyway, all right. Just want to say hi to a couple people. Hello. Who was that? I want to see who that is. Um, Billy Thorpe. Billy Thorpe. What's going on, dude? Good to see you, man. Good to see you. What's going on, Garen, man? Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning to you, man. All right. Listen, I'm in the process of relaunching my audio podcast too. What tips do you have to relaunch? Ooh, we can I I'm gonna star your question. Because we're gonna talk about that actually when I get Princess on here in a little bit as well, too. And Miss Anna Hill. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right. So Podcasters Live, the podcast is up and running. Go ahead. You can search Podcasters Live, .com. You can go and listen to it on any one of your platforms that you currently listen to podcasts on. We ask that you leave a rating and a review. Also, if there's some tips and or some things that you want to hear more about, please go ahead and make sure you put that in there as well for us because we want to make sure that we have the best show, out there, for podcasters who want to grow their community and authority using live streaming. So, all right, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was whew, man, oh man, I am fully caffeinated today. I have a venti um hazelnut white mocha here, so I am fully caffeinated and I'm ready to go. Those of you who know me don't know that I really don't need a lot of caffeination anyway. So marketing for the culture, May 21st. Man, oh man, what an amazing time down in Atlanta. Used to live down there, lived down there for 12 years. Lovely city. Traffic still sucks. Um, tons of stuff to do down there. But marketing for the culture was the brainchild of Michelle and Ngome, and she wanted to start a summit, if you will, for African Americans and from a marketing standpoint. And this was the inaugural summit or conference, however you want to call it. And I was so fortunate to be able to speak at the very first one, and was on a panel, as you can see, with my guy Monty Weaver, and then also the amazing Cher Jones, who's actually in the audience today. She moderated the conversation between Monty and I got to tell you, we could have gone for like 2 hours. They only gave us an hour, but we could have gone for about 2 hours. Monty and I were just like, dude, we were just getting warmed up, and the opportunity that we were presented with, and for myself from a podcaster's live standpoint, was to strictly talk about podcasting and how do you leverage podcasting to monetize your content, how to use live streaming to actually create community, but to also gain content ideas, gain real time feedback from your audience. So one of the things that we did notice, and here's the one thing too. So if you're a podcaster, if you're a live streamer, I mean, I got an episode coming up. We're gonna do some statistics around live streaming, right? And I'll just throw one of these out there. So live streaming is gonna be $70 billion business, and you need to take advantage of it. You need to start some measure of live streaming in your marketing funnel, if you will. But also, if you're a podcaster, I think it's advantageous for you because now people can see a face with the content that you're actually putting out there as well. So make sure make sure that you have a better understanding of what live streaming can do. So the marketing for the culture, we talked a lot about that. We positioned, or Cher did an amazing job of positioning Monty in our specialties. Monty does a lot of Amazon selling. We do the podcast live streaming piece of it and how we grow our business via coaching. But we were able to really kind of provide the audience with some really good information around understanding how they need to actually embrace one, podcasting, but also how to embrace live streaming as a form to actually grow their business. So it was just a great opportunity. We were on the stage for about an hour or so. It was um, the first of many, speaking opportunities. We have another one coming up next week in Orlando with Podfest. So we're going to be in Orlando next week. The cool thing I got coming up with that is I'm going to be actually emceeing a track. So if you ever been to one of these Podfests, they have different tracks, whether it's like a growth track, beginner track. I am going to be emceeing the audio and tech track. So that's on Saturday from 1:30 till 5. So that's actually really cool. Actually, just opportunity to connect with all the speakers, introduce the speakers, have some fun with the audience, engage with them. And then on and then on Sunday, I'm actually speaking and we're going to be talking about live streaming and how to grow your podcast using live streaming. So that's actually pretty cool stuff. So pretty stoked about it. Pretty stoked. All right. So as we continue to move on, if you have any questions, Melissa, I am definitely gonna get to. You know what? Let me just do that right now. I'm just gonna do that right now. I want to do it right now because I don't want you to wait. And then when we get Princess back on, we'll we'll have because I know she'll have some ideas too, some thoughts as well. But I want to just put your question back up there. I'm in the process of relaunching my audio podcast too. What tips do you have to relaunch? I think the biggest thing with relaunching a podcast is to think about the content that you actually want to put out, right? So we start to relaunch your podcast. What did you stop for in the beginning, right? Why did you stop? Maybe it could be work, it could have been family, it could have been other things, or whatever it can be. Have you kind of reevaluated your actual podcast and what you want to actually put out there? So maybe if you're saying you relaunch, maybe there has been some changes that you have thought about within your podcast, within your content. So I would think about maybe if you're going to be, it's not just a relaunch, maybe it's a refresh of your podcast. You may want to think about, the actual format of your podcast as well too, because something may not have worked previously, or you may have picked up some tips and tricks from another podcast that you want to implement. So when I think about relaunch, I think about the pieces before the launch. The relaunch is the structure of your podcast. And did it work for you back then? And if it did, cool. Just go ahead and do it. But I would almost hazard a guess that you'll probably want to do some like reevaluation, or maybe tweak things up a little bit. And that's 100% okay, because here's the thing: it's your podcast. The other thing with relaunching your podcast is going to be around timing, right? When do set it? Did you set a firm date of when you actually want to launch it, and then work your way backwards, from that date, and then actually create the actual content, just like we talked about with Podcasters Live. Even though it wasn't a relaunch, we wanted to launch with as many episodes as possible to give people a variety to actually listen to, and hopefully from a consumption standpoint, they will consume all four and of our actual episodes, not in one sitting, but they would kind of binge them. So that's one good way of actually gaining some traction for your relaunch, is to launch with multiple podcasts, right? um and then also do the marketing side of it. What does the marketing piece look like from when you say that you're actually going to launch to, let's say it's June 25th? So what does your marketing look like from now up until June 25th? And PJ, who's actually going to be coming up here in a little while, right? Did an amazing job of like doing, like a daily kind of launch, post for us. And that just kind of built some anticipation for the launch. So it was just a great opportunity for more people to kind of get their eyeballs, or potentially get their eyeballs on our new podcast as well. Um, One thing that I always talk about with podcasts and live streaming, this may not go into your relaunch, but it kind of goes into the content piece of it. So, do you have? I always call them content pillars, right? I talk about this in nauseum, right? Do you have pillars that you structure your content through, or that you filter your content through? Because if you don't, then you tend to, not you, but people tend to talk about whatever, And so if you have pillars, you have things that you actually kind of run your content through, the best content will come out on the other side. So make sure that you're actually doing that from a relaunch standpoint, and that you're taking out the fluff. And when you're relaunching, you're concentrating on what you want to do, what it is that you actually want to say, and making sure that your message is going to be clear, and not just so much concise, but clear for your audience as you relaunch. I don't know if that answered your question or not. Hopefully it did. If anybody who's out there has a question, please don't hesitate to put it in the comment section. I could talk about this stuff all day, kind of like Captain America. How Captain America when he fights, right? I'm still in this line, not just from him, but my gal, Cher Jones. Captain America, he's fighting and he's kind of getting beat up, and he stands up. He's like, dude, he's like, I can do this all day. I can do this literally all day. Podcasting and all this other stuff I can do all day. So let's move into some quick tips. So it's 9:26. Making some good time. We're making some good time. Thank you for your patience, Miss Princess out there. Structure, structure and pillars. Yes. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you like that, because I think when we start to think about our podcast, here's once again, I told you I can do this all day. There are probably now, I want to say there's probably 3 million podcasts that are out there, right? Here's the thing though. This should be encouraging for you. Even though there's that many podcasts that are out there are only about 30 to 40% that are actually active. And what I mean by that is, and this is not Steve's definition. This is the industry's definition that I got from Buzzsprout. One of my hosts was that active meaning someone has produced a podcast within the last 7 to 10 days. When you think about that 3 million number, you strip out around 60% of that, right? So now you're at 1,000,002 and 1,000,003 or whatever it is. So understand that there's still a lot of noise out there in the podcasting space, but there are a lot of people who start, and then now when you're actually about to go and relaunch, you have to make sure that you build consistency into your process as well too. All right, cool. I hope this is resonating with everybody. Any questions, any comments, please, once again, whether you're looking at this live or you're going to be looking at this on the replay, please make sure you put some comments and some questions in there. I will 100% get back to you, because at the end of the day, this is about you. This is about your journey as a podcaster and as a live streamer. All right. So a couple of tips, and I'm going to try my best to make these quick, because I want to get to Princess. All right. So podcast listeners crave learning. So the largest and the fastest growing age for podcasters is between 12 and 34. 61% of regular listeners have a 4-year degree. So think about that in the context, actually. So my first thought was podcast learners crave learning. Here's a little breakdown for what this looks like for people who are thinking about their audience or their avatar that they're actually going to be looking at. So Melissa, this can help you out too when you start to think about your content. Like, who are you actually positioning your content for, and what do they look like? Not so much physically, but maybe more psychographically. Like, what are their thoughts? What are their fears? What are their concerns? What do they want to do? What problems are you solving for them? So, all right. Okay. I told you I could talk about this all day. When something hits me, I got to stop. So problem solving, when you start to think about your content, it should be solving a problem. When you start to think about everybody who's going to be your audience, you think about this idea around podcasters crave learning. It is so important that you are trying to present a problem, and then that you're trying to solve a problem within your content for for your listeners. Because if you're not, then you just become entertainment. And there are so many, there's tons of entertaining podcasts that are out there. So you have to make sure that your podcast the content that you're actually solving some measure of a problem for somebody as well too. So the actual structure when you think about the actual listeners, the household income is actually pretty high. High school, a lot of them are 4-year degrees, right? Think about, I'm looking at this one up here where it talks a little bit about um, the age range, 35 to 50, 35 to 54. Podcast listeners, 36% of the age range between 35 and 54 listen to a podcast, 34% from 18 to 34. Think about that when you start to structure your content. Think about it when you start to structure who you're going to have on the show, the guests that you're going to have on the show, all these different things. So hopefully that one kind of helps you out a little bit too. Number 3, learn the art of conversation. The art of conversation is about being a listener, being curious, and knowing the outcome you want from your guest. I cannot, I cannot stress this enough. And we see it all the time. When you have a guest on your show and the guest has no bearing to your audience or the content that you want to put out there. And I get it. And I completely get it. When we're just starting out, we'll put our mom on as a guest, right? Because we at least will know our mom will say something nice about us. But when we start to think about, the guests that you actually want to have on your show, making sure that they actually align with your content and what it is that you want to put out there. But the big piece that I wanted to talk about was the art of the conversation. The art of the conversation is not just something that I want to talk about from when you actually have a guest, but it's actually a little bit what I'm trying to do right here is just to have a conversation. When I first started live streaming and even podcasting, right? One of the major things is that, you feel like you're speaking into the void. No one's listening, right? And as a beginning podcaster, you're right. No one is listening because no one knows you. Maybe your mom or your family or something like that. Same thing with live streaming, right? When you first start, there's not a lot of people that are going to be listening to you because you actually have to grow that muscle. You have to grow your brand. So you have to learn the art of just having a conversation one on one, really one on none. You just speaking into the void and actually being able to kind of carry the conversation along. It's a pretty, I won't say it's difficult, but it's something that actually has to be learned over time. You have to get your reps in. You have to practice. Yes, and I'm talking about practice. So when you start talking about the art of conversation, start practicing it, whether it's in the mirror or whether it's in a recorded, session, whether it's live streaming, you're live streaming into a community or whatever it may be. But you have to learn the art of conversation in order to be able to uh, keep the audience attention and then move them through the journey, whether it's your podcast or it's your live stream as well. Let me know if this is resonating with anybody out there. Please go ahead and say I'm tracking with you, Steve. Whether it's you now or you're in a replay. Let me know if you're tracking with me or if you have any other questions. I'm going to do this last tip. Topic generation gets easier with experience. 100% agree with this one. 100% agree with this one. Um, as you gain experience interacting and engaging with your viewers, you become increasingly familiar with what topics resonate most deeply with your audience. 100%, 100%. Here's the thing, when we start to think about our topics, I hear it all the time. I heard it last week when I was in Atlanta. I don't know what to talk about. I don't, I started a podcast and, I've kind of run out of things to talk about. Man, oh man. There are so many different avenues. And this could be actual live stream. Actually, all three of these could be a live stream in and of themselves. But the idea of generating topics, it's not so much that it's easy. It's just a matter of actually listening, right? We just talked a little bit about the art of the conversation is listening to being able to listen to your audience to generate information or generate feedback. And then once you listen and able to grab certain things, now you can actually translate that into various topics. And one of the things I know, and we'll probably talk about this once again with PJ, with Princess, when we bring her on, is the idea of like just dumping your ideas. For me, I actually take a lot of ideas and I dump them into Notions, and then I kind of go back and structure them. Sherry Jones and I, we got a big project and something that's coming up, and we were doing something different using Trello, um, from a idea generation standpoint, but it becomes easier when you put the work in and when you actually start to listen more to your audience than you do yourself. And what I mean by that is typically we put stuff out there because we feel like it's dope. Like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be awesome. This is gonna be amazing. And it probably will, but it doesn't resonate with with your audience. And if it doesn't resonate with your audience, then I'm not sure if that's something that you want to put out there. Right. You can put it out there, but you have to get the feedback from it as well. So we just talked about the last one. The last one was topics generation gets easier with experience. I flew through those because I wanted to make sure that I left some time, one, for any questions that you guys may have, because I want to go ahead and bring Princess on. Good morning, Walter. You put in the work and trust the process. You have to put in the work and trust the process. 100%, man. 100%. And Anisha says, good morning to share. So um, I wanted to, I want to bring on, let me do this first. Um, there are different things that I'm pretty good at, and there are things that I know I suck at, right? So if you're an entrepreneur, you're going down this journey that I have, and if you're a podcaster or a live streamer, there's certain things that you're actually really good at. There are certain things that you suck at, and I know what I suck at. I know what I'm horrible at. I know that when it comes time for the marketing pieces, forget about it. This is what I like. The get me behind the mic, talking to you, recording the podcast, right? Some of the other stuff, man, I know it has to get done, right? But sometimes I it doesn't resonate with me. So that's when you have to bring in a specialist. That's when you have to bring in somebody who actually knows what they're doing and can actually help you in that context of understanding a little bit more about. I'm gonna make sure I want to make sure I got the scene correct. So um I have found an amazing person to help me with Podcasters Live. They're an experienced podcaster themselves. They have their own they have their own business as well. So we're gonna talk to her. And I just wanted to introduce Miss Princess Jasmine Neary. Did I get it correct?
Yes, you got it correct.
Did I get
Neri, actually, Neri. So it's
Nary,
close.
Nary, Nary? I got it. All right. I tried to get it. I tried to get it. How are you doing, PJ?
I'm great. How are you, Steve?
I am great. Thank you for hanging out. Um, for in the back scenes. Hopefully, I didn't put you to sleep. I saw you nodding off a little bit back there, so hopefully, I didn't put you to sleep back there talking.
You know what? I don't know if you can tell, but lives really make me nervous. So please excuse me if I stutter sometimes. But yeah, glad to be here.
Oh my gosh, please. You are you're a professional. Don't worry about the nerves. It is what it is. When we start talking about everything, then we'll rock it out. So can you just tell people a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do and about your company as well?
Hi, everyone. Whoever's tuning in, hello, hello. I'm Princess Jasmine Jewel Chongsoneri. I know it's a mouthful, so let's just stick to PJ. So I'm PJ Neri, and I am a podcaster and the founder and CEO of Visionary Media. So my team and I, we help podcasters, coaches to transform more lives through podcasting. So I'm really grateful to have met Steve. He's an amazing guy, and it's been fun so far working with him. So thank you, Steve, for having me here.
She said, "So hold on, man. You said so far. See, okay. You just I caught that. I caught on to that. I caught on to that. I'm just messing with you. No, I I'm excited. I think one of the first things that you helped me do was to gain a little more clarity with my audience with Podcasters Live, and I appreciate that. I wanted to get your perspective on the question that Melissa asked earlier
Mhm.
before we move into the organization piece. And her question was, I'm in the process of relaunching my audio podcast. What tips do you have for relaunch? So, what tips do you have for Melissa?
Hi there, Melissa. That's a nice question, and that's actually a very common thing that podcasters ask, especially when they go through what we call pod fade. So, just for everyone's reference, what is pod fade? Pod fade is actually something I've also gone through myself. Basically, it's like a phase that when you're a podcaster, you're so excited, you want to launch your podcast, you have a lot of stories and ideas to share, and then suddenly you stop creating, or you lessen the frequency of producing your podcast. And there's a lot of reasons why podcasters go through this. Maybe, Melissa, it could be a different reason for you, but for the most part, um, pod fade happens when there is lack of preparation.
Mm,
Probably there is no structure, lack of commitment as well. So I'm going to share some tips later on how you can actually beat that with some tips that you might find helpful as well.
excellent, excellent. Let me make sure I got this thing set. Okay, good deal. So, thank you. We're going to talk about organization and how that actually, what that actually looks like. So you
Mhm.
have some organizational tips here. And number one, choose a project management tool that you are comfortable with. So you go into some detail about that one?
Yeah. So number one, project management tool. So for those who are watching, project management tool, there's a lot in the market. There's Google Suite, there's Notion, which I also use, and Steve also uses. There's Asana, there's ClickUp, there's a ton. There's even Trello. So don't get overwhelmed with this project management tools. The important thing is you choose something that you are comfortable with, because it can be overwhelming, especially you're not too much of a tech person. uh, why we use it, why you need it, is because you want your thoughts organized. You have like a section for brain dumping your ideas that you can go back to later on. You want to organize your episodes. You want to plan your season, and you want to know what
Mm-hmm.
um, what episodes you've done, because like what say if you have done 534 episodes, you just want to know what you've already done, or probably like even your guests. There's a lot of things that you can put into your project management tool. Now, you may not get it like so easily done in the first time that you use it. The important thing is it's like your second brain.
Mm,
And
mm,
podcasters get overwhelmed because there's so many ideas, right? So you have to actually put them somewhere and make them happen. So that's why you need it. So that's
yeah.
the first tip.
Yeah, she's pointing at me. She didn't point at me, but she kind of pointed at me with all those ideas, because I think with one of our first or maybe our second session, we were talking, and I was like, okay, dude, it's like I just got all this stuff in my head, like I got all these ideas, and like and she's like, okay, all right. She's a super calming influence. It's like, all right, Steve, great, that's great, that's great. Let's organize all of this stuff, because I am like, you know, you know, 10 steps ahead, and she's like, okay, that's great, let's come on back and let's structure your season. One of the things that I appreciate, because I didn't do it, and I don't do it with retail leadership with Steve Worthy, and I may start doing it, but I haven't, was seasons. And we're gonna move to the next tip in a second here, but what's the benefit that you have seen? And I know what I've seen. I feel like I've seen a benefit of it too already. But what are some of the benefits that you see helping people understand that, maybe to kind of use seasons for their podcast?
Okay, so like what we've done,
Mm,
Steve and I, we planned the season. So imagine, Steve was talking about, about communication, right? Earlier, you were mentioning that,
mhm,
because when we create a podcast, I mean, you're going to build your audience and you're going to talk to people. People are actually going to listen to you.
Yeah.
And what's good about podcasts is that, and live streams, I mean, you develop a more intimate relationship with your audience. So planning a season, of course, you want your audience to binge at your content. So
Mm,
let's say normally a season could consist of like 10 episodes. You want them to be cohesive enough that
mm,
when they go to your
mm,
podcast, they don't just listen for the first few seconds. They will actually listen to the first and then find the next one again. It's like a buffet, right? Let's
mm,
say
mm,
the first season we're going to cover imposter syndrome, and there's so many things that you can talk about under that topic alone.
mm,
So you want your audience who are so interested in that topic to have like a buffet of value,
mm.
so that they can just go back to your podcast again and again and again, and then in the process they develop a more intimate relationship with you. And for you as a podcaster, then you actually build your credibility.
Yeah. And then I think a couple things was that, you know, when I saw the structure of the season that you had laid out for us, I was like, okay, cool. Like, all right. And then, one of the things that I did was I just started recording, and got somebody else, my good buddy Jamie, to edit the podcast. But that was almost freeing a little bit for me, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know, podcasters. Some podcasters will get it. Maybe some live streamers will get it, but I don't know. Maybe it was freeing for me when I saw the actual structure and the podcast
Hmm.
episodes, and it's just like, okay, cool. Now I know. It's almost like when I go to the gym. When I go to my gym,
Hmm.
they have it. They have the workout already on the board, and all I got to do is do it. And I don't have to think. I don't have to I don't have to go in there like, okay, well, how many reps do I need to do? Or how many, it's just like, dude, it's right there, Steve. This is what you need to do. That works
Hmm.
for me in certain instances, especially because how my mind works. And so for when you set that up, that was exactly it. It was like, dude, Steve, do this. And then I looked and I trusted the flow, and it all just made sense. I was like, okay, now I need to go and rock and roll and start recording. So that piece of it actually kind of helped me out a lot, and I think that's something a lot of people need to think about when they start to structure their podcast from an episode standpoint. The other thing that it does too is that it helps you. If you want to do live streaming as well as a podcaster, you can take some of those same episode topics and actually bring them on as a live stream, right? Because like you said earlier, we're not stripping the audio from our live stream and making it into a podcast. We're actually kind of transforming it and making it into a different piece of content. And I think the same thing can be done, be reverse engineered, is to take a podcast episode and make it into a live stream topic that actually you probably can take a piece of that episode and maybe go deeper on with your audience and actually oops, and make a deeper connection with your audience from using that live stream, from using that podcast episode. So just throwing that out there to people who are listening, they're kind of thinking about, we just talked about content creation and all that other stuff too. So, all right, cool. Number two, uh, this one, number two.
Hmm.
Yeah, you jacked me up on this one. Set deadlines, set deadlines, and commit to them. I know, right? I know. I'm trying. I'm trying. I'm trying to get another client. You can't tell everybody how hard, how messed up I am and how much I jacked you up. I'm supposed to be nice, but you are nice. You
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 are
are
nice.
you are
You
super nice. No,
are.
you are super nice. Number two, set
Oh, thank
deadlines
you.
and commit to them. So talk us about that one.
Yes, deadlines, they're very important, aren't they? So, of course, you're going to announce to your community that you have a podcast coming up. And of course, you have to honor them with that promise. So, you have to set deadlines so that it will also push you to do the work and really commit to it. Because, when I think about podcasts, I also think about the word sustainability and
Mhm,
commitment, right?
mhm,
So you have to be committed to it, because I also get a lot of questions, like, normally when people want to, launch a podcast, there's a lot of excitement,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
they
yeah.
don't know that there's also a lot of work, behind a podcast. So you have to set deadlines, you have to stick to a schedule. And for a busy person, like Steve, and many others, um, you really have to be realistic as well. So for
Yeah,
example,
yeah.
what day in a week can you actually schedule a batch content creation? Be realistic in the beginning. Can you do, like, let's say, 2 hours, 3 hours, or maybe you're just, committed to do 1 hour for now. So be
Mhm.
very realistic, because once you start a podcast, it's like marriage. You have to be
Yeah.
committed to it, because imagine, people will start listening, and then again, I mentioned pod fade, and then you just suddenly disappear. So it's not, it's doing a disservice for your listeners as well. I just want to inject, like,
Yeah.
a statistic. Pod fade in
Mm,
2018, there was actually, Amplify Media. There was an interview about the CEO of Amplify Media, and he mentioned that, out of all the podcasts, produced that year, only
mm.
25% released new episodes. See, so
Yeah.
it's not. I mean, it's fun, it's good, but it also entails some work. So you really have to be prepared and plan ahead.
Yes. That's such a great, I mean, I think that's the thing that a lot of people, when they start thinking about podcasting, and once again, this is not to deter anybody from podcasting, because when you get into it, like, you literally, either you fall in love with it, or you just and you accept that there's work, or you you get this you know you get disenchanted, because you think you should have more listeners and more downloads and all this other stuff. And and thank you for that statistics about pod fade. And I think one of the other things that people need to understand is that when you actually have to manage your expectations with your podcast, right? And so if you mismanage your expectations, that could also lead to, this feeling of like, oh my gosh, when nobody's listening, and oh,
Mm.
why can't I be like Joe Rogan and Jordan Harbinger, and get like all these downloads and all this other stuff, and it just doesn't work like that. You gotta put the work in, and you gotta be in this for the long haul as well too. So I appreciate you saying that. So number three, use templates, workflows, outlines, and use them for repetitive processes. Want to talk about that?
Mhm. So, of course, when you start, creating a podcast, there are repetitive tasks: recording, inviting guests, and marketing. There's so many. So, you really have to create your SOPs from
Mm,
the very beginning, your
hmm.
systems, because they're going to help you in the long run. So, for example, you're starting solo for now, like an all man, all in one team, just you and yourself, basically. You really have to create these systems, because as you scale, it will help you, um, actually pass it on to someone else who can help you. So
Yeah.
it's easier, right? Also, when you create a system, um, say for inviting guests, of course you want to be personal, but you have to have at least like a, even like a very simple template, but again, still be personal about it, because of course you're going to invite them, as well as, let's say, the structure of your show that you actually have to also, create. So
Hmm,
basically,
hmm,
all your SOPs, what
hmm.
happens in your show, where the music enters,
Yeah.
what the introduction is, all those stuff you have to document, so that later on, as you scale, it's just going to be like very easy for you to get that off your plate.
Yeah. I love. And here's the one thing I love about working with you was you know your not just your onboarding, but then the structure that you sent out for tracking the episodes, who's doing what, um when is this going to be done, all of those pieces for me were just great from an organization standpoint, because it let me know what I needed to get done, who I needed to talk to, and where I was kind of in the process of having the deliverables to you and making sure that they were delivered timely. I missed a couple deadlines, a couple of things. So, I know you're gonna get on me. I know you're gonna jack me up. Um,
Mm,
but I think the template piece is 100% correct. Like in the workflows and outlines, I use Notions, and I'm gonna do a whole live stream on Notions, from a workflow and guest standpoint too, and also podcast episode and live stream episodes, because it actually just allows me to keep everything in one kind of set kind of repository. The
mhm,
actual topic, um, the bullet points, the research, everything that I need for one episode, I can put into like one little area in my notions, and that makes everything simple. So even like when I do a live stream, I have a I'm fortunate enough to have another screen here where I can actually just have my notions up, and if I'm doing interviewing somebody, I got all of my notes like right here. But I do the same thing when I do my podcast episode. I have all my episode but notes right here, and then I'm actually just recording it right here, and I'm looking over, and then I go. So just having a structure and some things in place can actually help you out tons. You sent this over, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this too, right? Because
mhm.
I think this right here is, I think is a critical piece. Can you walk us through this workflow, this content flow, and this is for
Mhm.
podcasters live, and so I want you to just walk us through this.
Okay, so this is actually inspired from Gary V's content model. So,
Mhm.
in the case of Steve, so he is doing live streaming on YouTube, right? And then it will be repurposed for a podcast, but again, it will be like done in a different way, so it still sounds fresh. So, if you can see the arrows from a podcast, there's a transcription, show notes, which can be repurposed into a blog, and then from there, um, the audiograms from the podcast can be posted on your social media, whereas the blogs can be, repurposed into micro content for like social media captions. So why are we doing this content flow? For for Steve, or you can also try to use this for your own podcast. Again, because we want you to have less to think about. We don't want you to be overwhelmed, because you have to enjoy the process as well. If it's all over the place, then um, you will get overwhelmed, and when you are overwhelmed, then you will get into pod fade. And we want you to enjoy the whole process, and have a sustainable podcast. So it's easier to have it this way, structured this way, that so that not a piece of any of your content goes to waste as well.
Yeah, and I love what you just said. The last piece that you just said, that not a piece of your content goes to waste. I think the tendency is that we want to, and I put myself in that same boat initially, right? Until I started to listen to more people, and people like yourself as well, is that you want everyone wants to just kind of create all these different pieces of content. Well, you can take the one big piece, which is the live stream, if you will, and take that, and now look at how many different pieces of content I've been able to get out of that live stream, which is crazy. Or I can even do it like, I'm looking at all these pieces, and I'm looking like like blogs. So we have like 6 or 7 blog posts on our website right now. Actually, I think about 3 of those I've actually turned into a podcast, right? It's just like it's a standalone podcast episode, but I was able to take the blog post and actually kind of repurpose it, and so now it's actually kind of going back through that funnel, show notes,
Mm.
transcriptions, and then social media and yada yada yada, right? So I think people have to understand that when you take that one big piece of content, how do you actually kind of parse it out so that it could actually work for you, and from a longer standing perspective than just like just as one standalone piece of content as well.
Yes, and
Yeah.
another
Hmm.
thing, Steve, that I
Yep.
would like to add,
Absolutely.
when you do it this way, you're also exploring your other audiences beyond your network, because TikTok is another ecosystem. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, they are all different ecosystems, and so doing it this way as well can boost your presence. It can make you more visible to more people, and those are the benefits, and then in the end you're not burned out, so yeah, it helps a lot.
Yeah. So I like you just talked about like your presence on other areas. So one thing you and I
Hmm.
have talked about, of course, for me that I'm going to start getting into, and I'm going to start doing, and I'm working through. Not it's not even nerves. It's just like the
Is it
process. It's the
are you
workflow.
gonna be dancing now,
No,
Steve?
dun, 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 no, I can't. No, 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 no. I do that
Mhm.
in the privacy of, of my.
But
Of,
mind you, he's gonna start doing it soon.
I know.
Maybe.
Yeah. It's funny. Well, I don't know about the dancing piece. So I'm trying to figure out. Well, I've actually kind of figured out a way of doing it where
Mhm.
where I'm actually just using what I currently have too, right?
Mhm.
So people hear this, right? So if you have a camera, if you have an opportunity to record yourself doing certain things, like I don't know why I haven't really truly like recorded myself. I did it a while ago, like really just recorded myself recording a podcast, right? Got another camera here, I got a camera here. I can just do that, and you don't actually have to physically hear the podcast like from a real standpoint, but I can just put something up saying, recording my first podcast, tip number one, yada yada yada. Now it actually kind of becomes a real, or it becomes a TikTok, or I can put a little funny caption or voice dub over the video. So I'm working with my video guy, so anytime I send him something, we are um, we're doing very similar to what we're doing here. We're taking that one video, and now we're taking pieces out of it, making it into like TikToks and Reels. So everything like
Mhm.
50 seconds. So I got like one I did. It's like 50 seconds. He put it all together for me. I don't think I posted it on Instagram, but I didn't put it in the Reels yet, and I didn't put it on TikTok. But those are the things that I said, okay, we're going to take what we currently have and actually kind of parse it out and utilize it. So instead of me just having that one big piece of a video, like, dude, I need like six, 50-second clips out of this. And that's what he's doing
Mhm.
as he's going through the editing process as well. So just think about that, and then Princess, you inspired me to do the same thing with like the audiograms. So when Jamie and those guys are editing the podcast, they're actually going to start stripping out like one 2 or 3 1 minute clips that will help resonate. And then now, guess what? Now we can utilize that for audiograms and um you know um the different pieces of content too.
Mhm.
So anyway, so it's a lot of good stuff that you can do from just actually that one piece of content as well.
Mhm.
What other pieces of advice do you have before I let you go? For anybody who's on the fence, anybody who um may be thinking about starting a podcast, or like in Melissa's case, they may be thinking about relaunching a podcast. What are some pieces of advice that you can give some people?
If there's one piece of advice that I would like to give is that don't overthink it, just do
Mm,
it.
mm,
Because if you're overthinking it, then you're stalling yourself. Imagine your listeners. Imagine the transformation that they will get because of your podcast. And also imagine yourself transforming in the process, because you are giving value.
yeah,
And when you're giving value, people learn from you, and you're also learning more about yourself. So that's what I love and what I advocate about podcasting. It's something that actually can build relationships with other people that you haven't even met,
Mm,
and
mm,
you learn so much about yourself, you learn more about people. So yeah, just do it, don't overthink it.
mm, mm. So hopefully you guys can see why I'm partnering with PJ because of her passion, her intelligence, and her perspective around podcasting. And it's not just around podcasting; it's around the individual and what you want to get out of this journey of being a podcaster. PJ, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
All righty.
Bye.
All right. Bye. Oh man, what a great you know, I think relaunch of our podcasters live academy on a Saturday morning. I hope you guys were able to get, you know, some information that you can actually take now and actually implement right now in your podcast, in your live stream, some thoughts that, you know, will kind of move you forward in your journey. You know, we want to make sure at Podcasters Live is that you understand how to grow your podcast, grow your community, right, and grow your authority using live streaming. The podcast live podcast, you gotta listen to the trailer. If there's anything I would ask that you start with when you go to, let me make sure here. You can start with the trailer. Start with this trailer because I have people in here like Ash Borland, Cher Jones, James Critland, you know, John Bryan, J A Smith, um, Jamie Taylor, Susie Buttress, Scorpion November. Got a couple other. I don't know if Heather's on there, but Heather Roma, who was on our live stream, her episode. Actually, we're doing a separate episode with her, and where we talked about your brand story. So that's probably going to be the last episode I think of our season. But the trailer just contains different snippets of all of our episodes, you know, thus far, and different pieces that I know will resonate with you. But more importantly, it will actually help you and help you understand kind of what we're talking about and what we're trying to do as a podcast. Because, you know, in Podcasters Live, one of the things we knew that we were going to do a while ago was to actually have a podcast. We just didn't want to do a live stream. We wanted to make sure that we were going to have a podcast, but that podcast had to be a little different. It had to sound different, had to look different. Um, it had to resonate differently than what we were typically listening to, you know, out there. Um, Also the content, you know, we wanted to make sure that our content was structured and that it actually provided. I'm going to use my own word that I said I don't like anymore. That it but actually provided some value and some takeaways for you. You know, there are tons and tons of entertaining podcasts out there. We want to be fun, but we want to make sure that you're learning something and that you're able to move your podcast and your live stream forward as well. Once again, you can go and check out our merch store at prestonso.com and Podcasters Live. And, you know, if you like this little hoodie, you can, you know, little hoodie, leave it a note in the comments and say, hey, Steve, I like this one. It's awesome. I know it's summertime. Um, but in the fall, you're going to be wishing you actually had something like this or some of those cool summer evenings that you can kind of just throw this puppy on and kind of go about your business. It's actually really soft and really enjoying it as well too. So if you have any questions and you're listening to this on a replay, please don't hesitate to put something in the comments because we will 100% get back to you with our feedback, our thoughts. But we want to answer all of your questions. Until next week, till next week, we will actually be on location next week because I'm still going to do this live next week. We're going to be in Orlando, and at Podfest. But I don't start stuff until 1:30 or something like that. So I will still do this in Orlando live, probably via my laptop. I'll have my gear with me as well too. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to doing something kind of live, you know, for with Podcasters Live, right? Have a great Saturday. Have a great rest of your weekend. We talk to you soon. God bless.